Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, Insurance Broker of the Stars. Today I got a shout out from a number of people over the last few days that wanted me to answer this question on legal counsel for breaches as was posted on Reddit. All right, before we begin, you guys know the drill. That's my latest book, Damage Control, Cyber Insurance Compliance. That's where you download it for free. Next, shout out to these fine people for specifically asking me to answer this question. So if this is one of you, thanks guys, appreciate it. All right, next, here's the actual question, and I'm sure you've read this, but I wanted to highlight a couple issues here that I saw. So, in essence, what they're saying is, hey, we don't have a good idea on what to do with the legal counsel recommendation. They're like, do you know a person or a firm that has experience with this in the past moving forward? But within this question, there's actually a number of issues that I saw, as well as in some of the responses moving down, of things that I really thought needed to be addressed, because there's some misconceptions here and some issues that need to be unpacked to actually answer this type of question. Now, the first question here is, he goes, hey, we're worried about navigating a breach. This may sound pedantic, but it's actually really important. Is the website down? What type of breach are you actually worried about? Now, are we talking about a data breach, generally access and acquisition of client information? That's PII, PHI, PCI, etc., at least at the state and most of the federal level. You need to understand the difference between a data holder versus a data owner, and that's really going to come into play here. So think about it this way. Let's say you have a client and they're a CPA firm, and that CPA firm is storing their client information on your system. Now, if that information gets stolen, so both access and acquired, generally, who's actually paying for, we'll keep it simple here, breach notification and credit monitoring? Who's doing that? Well, it's probably not going to be your MSP, because you're generally construed as the data holder. The data owner is the CPA firm, which means that generally they're the ones that need to pay for breach notification, credit monitoring, and all those other associated costs if an actual data breach occurs. There could be some type of nuanced situation here, like you're a business associate of a covered entity under HIPAA, and their definition of a breach differs. So in that particular regard, that could be a ransomware event as well as a data breach. And then there's obviously some other issues within that as well. And then let's say you're worried about a ransomware event. Are you worried about a single extortion event, a double extortion event, a triple extortion event? All of these have different repercussions moving forward, both on the legal side in terms of what your liability could be, as well as the insurance side on kind of what you need to look for inside of an appropriate insurance policy. Now, Silent Storm 2008 here, he put down, hey, generally your cyber insurance carrier provides a combination of first-party and third-party cyber liability. That is both correct and technically inappropriate for an MSP, and I'm going to explain why that is. But suffice to say, if you are watching this and you have a cyber liability policy, you need to stop and watch this video right here. This is the most common insurance mistake I see MSPs actually making at the moment. So this is not a cyber liability issue per se. This is actually a tech E&O liability discussion. So let's talk about the distinction between cyber liability and tech E&O liability. And this is all for like third party, right? This is someone trying to come against your firm. So for the cyber side, what would that type of liability be that could be covered under a cyber liability policy? Costs associated with the loss or theft of third-party data. What would that be in practice? One of your clients, they're going to bring a claim against you because let's say their social security number was on your system, that got stolen. Because of that, they're saying, hey, I dealt with identity theft and I'm going to bring a claim against you. Well, first of all, the probability of that is like damn near zero. Read my book, it's in there. I also published an article on that in, the CPA Journal. So you're probably not going to be worried about that type of claim. Now, would this, let's say your CPA firm client, could they face that type of claim? In theory, yes, they could face that type of claim from their clients. You are probably not going to face that type of claim from your clients. What are you probably worried about? Some allegation of a failure of service or software that you were associated with. So here's an example. Client comes back to you. They say, hey, you know what? We did our investigation. It turns out you misconfigured our firewall. Because of that, ransomware got into our system. Because of that, we were down for, let's say, the industry average 16 days. We had to have all these costs associated with breach response, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, we are now going to bring a claim against you to try and recover the money we spent responding to this event that you should have prevented. That is probably the type of liability that you are specifically concerned about here. That is most likely to be found on a tech E&O policy. Now, with a tech E&O policy, there's going to be two parts that are actually pertinent to this particular discussion here. First is going to be the E&O side of a tech E&O policy. And I understand a tech E&O policy, it's not the best term, but hey, it's what we got, okay? So third-party liability, what is that? Somebody wants money from your business. And that would be generally following some type of cyber event, right? Or some type of professional service you render to that organization. So you allegedly committed some type of error or omission while committing professional services. So who could come after you? Clients, regulators, some other things that could fall in there: media liability, PCI DSS, fines, penalties, et cetera, under your merchant services agreement. That's that side. What's the other side of a tech E&O policy? That's the cyber side. That's first party. So that's generally, hey, what you're going to pay for if you didn't have insurance. Within that, there's just a couple buckets: data breach, ransomware, loss of funds, and miscellaneous. So those are the two sides and the four buckets that compromise just about every tech E&O policy I have ever looked at. And I have now looked at quite a few. I'm in the middle of actually writing a book on insurance for MSPs. It's kind of a side note. Whenever that gets done, I'll post it up on Reddit for everyone to download. Now, let's say your firm gets hit with ransomware. What are you worried about? We already talked about some of that third-party side. Let's talk about the first-party side now. Let's refocus on that. What are some potential ransomware coverages you should look for under your own tech E&O policy? Okay, yeah, they're going to have a breach attorney in there. What is that? That's going to be like a 911 call. Probably not built for MSPs because you're already very technical people. What are you concerned about there? The attorney. What's the attorney going to be doing for you? Pretty much the catch-all, kind of running the show in most regards, hand in hand with assigned claims counsel that comes from, or a claims adjuster, I should say, that comes from your tech E&O insurance company. Next, forensics, determine scope and nature of the breach, remove the offending piece of malware, ransomware payment with a caveat, negotiator to try and lower and deal with the ransoming party, hacker damage, that also deals with data restoration, business interruption with a forensics accountant or accounting firm to help you actually evidence that loss. Same with reputational harm situationally with the forensics accountant or accounting firm to help you evidence that loss. Next, crisis management, public relations, very situationally notifications, credit monitoring, regulatory fines and penalties, et cetera, et cetera. There's some other miscellaneous coverages that could come into play here, such as bricking coverage would be an example, but these are kind of the tried and true. Now, that was the first party side. Let's go back to this third party claim side. What could potentially be in there? Well, we know that you're already going to have an attorney for the first party side if we go back here. Next, third party side, claims, expenses, and damages. What's that about? Claims expenses means, this is an example I just pulled from a policy. Reasonable and necessary, you'll see right there at the top. Attorney's fees, mediation, arbitration expenses, expert witness, consultant fees, attendance expenses, that'd be court attendance, other fees, blah, 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 dealing with bonds. And what does it not include? Salaries, wages, compensation of an insured person, et cetera, et cetera. Next, damages means any amounts an insured becomes legally obligated to pay on account of any claim, including compensatory damages, settlements, judgments, awards of prejudgment, post-judgment interest, some for deposit, punitive, exemplary multiplied damages, blah, 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 blah. So you'll see inside of there. So all of that being said, if you have the right insurance policy, and by that I generally mean a tech E&O insurance policy, and within that tech E&O insurance policy, you have the appropriate coverages to deal with a breach, as you said, or some type of cyber event, I will use loosely, then an attorney should be part of those coverage features, right? But make sure you're actually knowing what you need to get. And I hate to say it, but my peer group is generally not the best and brightest of the financial services industry. So make sure you're asking your insurance broker the appropriate questions there. Now, all of that being said, actually having a cyber attorney prior to an event could actually be a really good idea for you. What do I mean by that? Well, first is going to be obviously looking over your contracts. So your MSAs, your statement of work, your SLAs, whatever you call them, however you're particularly set up there. Next, looking through regulations for you and your client, because that's going to have an impact on some of the nasty things that could befall your firm following some type of cyber event. Next, looking over contracts with both your vendors and your clients. There's all types of nuances in these contracts. I've seen contracts where they say, hey, if you're going to do business with us, if you have any type of cyber event at all, even if there is no acquisition of information, just access of information, you then have to notify us according to these specific stipulations, in which case it wouldn't necessarily qualify as a data breach or a ransomware event under the, let's say, strict definitions of the law, but you may still have legal obligations that would then have great implications under your cyber insurance policy. Next, there could be issues just randomly dealing with response, where having your own cyber attorney will assist you with the attorney provided by the insurance company. And what do I mean by that? Well, you're going to have very, very specific concerns and worries and potential legal obligations that need to be addressed by your attorney. That would be the attorney that you particularly hire, to the attorney provided by the insurance company. I'm not going to delve too far into that. If you want to know more about that, this is the video. I'll put a link in the description below. Next, because it is inevitable, as you said, please watch this video. This is, I'm not going to say it's super entertaining. It's not a page-turner murder mystery, but this could really keep you out of trouble here. I put this together for the group. It's defense in depth for your MSP. It deals with all types of risk management, risk transference, and ideally gives you the firepower to actually fight back. Now, eventually these are just going to be pretty much mandatory from insurance companies on the tech E&O side. At the current time, a lot of these are still voluntary, or the MSP community at large doesn't even know that these things exist and why they're important. So please watch this. I'll put a link in the description below. All right, with that, if you found this useful and hopefully you learned something today, please like, share, comment, subscribe, upvote, etc., etc. I try to put out a new video every Thursday. Currently, that's kind of up in the air because, like I said, I am writing a book on insurance for MSPs. So stay tuned for that. And with that, stay safe.